Hello, so I am discussing the Knox Trail. The Knox Trail goes back to two battles specifically in the American Revolution, Battle of Bunker Hill and the Battle of Fort Ticonderoga. George Washington was stuck outside of Boston at this point after these two battles, and the British were entrenched within the city, being resupplied by the Royal Navy's access to Boston Harbor. After the loss at Bunker Hill, the Patriots, they did not have enough power anymore to remove the British from Boston. But after the victory at Fort Ticonderoga, the Patriots did have access to new artillery at the fort. So in comes the main person that is making up the Knox Trail, Henry Knox. Henry Knox was a bookseller in Boston. He studied military history and engineering. He had often had conversations with British soldiers and officers who had entered his bookstore. And Knox, he had the experience. And at the time, he had the benefit of the commander of the Army's artillery, Colonel Richard Gridley, falling ill, which meant George Washington would recommend him to take over that position. With that new position, he is going to recommend that him and his artillery unit go up to Fort Ticonderoga to grab the artillery up there and bring it to Cambridge, where Washington was just right outside of Boston. Knox would get his approval. He would arrive in Fort Ticonderoga on December 5th, 1775. Once there, he found in total 59 usable artillery, and the trek to Boston with all usable pieces would mean he would have to drag 12,000 pounds 300 miles in the middle of winter. He had to face heavy snowfall, and this would slow his movement through Saratoga and Albany. He would no longer take about 2 weeks, it would take about 40 days instead. By January, Knox would be traveling through western Massachusetts, through Great Barrington, Otis, Springfield, using oxen and horses to pull all the artillery. And he would eventually make it to Cambridge in a total of 40 days, like I said. The artillery would be precisely put around the city to force the British out of Boston. Now today, it is known what towns Knox traveled through. There are trails and there's markers placed where it's believed that he did travel, which gives it the name of the Knox Trail. The only issue is the Knox Trail is not exactly precise in Western Mass and in some other places, because some of the markers that were placed over the last centuries were not precisely put in the right spot. The Issue Historical Commission in Monterey, Mass member Robert Hogg says specifically, and I quote, "There are many things we don't know," unquote. There is no eyewitness civilian records of Knox's trek through Western Mass. Only Knox himself left an account, and that is why there are still people like Tom Ragusa, who's trekking through the Berkshires, looking for the areas where Knox described in his journal. And that means the Knox Trail is preserved, but it's also not preserved, because there are some locations that are correct, but there are also locations that are not correct. So why this is important can vary from person to person, especially in Western Mass and in New York, where the Knox Trail goes. A Saratoga County historian, Lauren Roberts, who was in charge of Knox 250 commemoration, comments on how happy and thrilled and meaningful it is that she can celebrate this happening in her backyard. Hoggs from Monterey says it's important because it's a mix of both national and local stories. Then there is Gary Leeville of Lee, who considered that Knox did was very miraculous. So everyone has pride in the history of the Knox Trail, but why they are prideful can vary. And to end this video, I know my students are listening, and we live near the Knox Trail, so I know a field trip to the Knox Trail can be extremely opportunistic. To have the physical sense of seeing where the revolution traveled through first hand, and they would jump on the chance to go outside while we learn about the battles of the American Revolution, to see where some artillery traveled through their backyards.